In this video, we're going to start the KutaSoftware Infinite Algebra 2 free worksheet solving inequalities. I'll leave a link in the video description below so you can access this free worksheet. Our directions are to solve each inequality and graph its solution. In number 1, we have 0 is greater than 3x minus 3 minus 6. What I'm going to do is I'm going to combine my like terms on the right hand side of this inequality. That's going to be my 3 and my 6. And I'm subtracting both of those. So I'm going to have 0 is greater than 3x minus, so we're taking away 3, so that's negative 3, and then we're taking away 6, so adding negative 6. Negative 3 plus negative 6 is negative 9. So this is going to be 3x minus 9, or plus a negative 9. My next step is to add 9 to both sides. I'll get that 9 is greater than 3x. My final step is to divide both sides of the inequality by 3 to get that 3 is greater than x. And if you want your variable on the left-hand side, just switch the two and say x is less than 3. Remember that when you're flipping an inequality, you also have to switch the sign. So 3 is greater than x is the same as x is less than 3. So when we graph this, knowing that x is less than 3, x is everything to the left of 3. So we're going to circle 3, and we're not going to shade it in since x cannot be 3, and we're going to shade in everything to the left. X is less than 3. So that means x could be 2, x could be 1, x could be 0, x could be negative 0.5, and so on. And any of those values would make this inequality true. Let's move on to number 2. In number 2, we have 4x plus 1 minus 1 is greater than or equal to negative 8. Combining like terms, 1 minus 1, we're going to get 0. So that'll be 4x plus 0, which is simply 4x. And that's going to be greater than or equal to negative 8. So I'll divide by 4 on both sides to get that x is greater than or equal to negative 2. So I have x is greater than or equal to negative 2. So I'm going to circle the negative 2, shade it in since x can be negative 2, since it's greater than or equal to, and I'm going to shade in everything to the right. So x could be negative 1, 0, 0.75, and so on, as long as it's greater than or equal to negative 2. And number 3, negative 1 is less than or equal to 2n plus 4 minus 5. I'm going to combine my like terms, which are my 4 and 5 on the right. So I'll have negative 1 is less than or equal to 2n plus 4 minus 5 is going to be a negative 1. Then I'll add 1 to both sides of my inequality. Negative 1 plus 1 is 0, so I'll have 0 is less than or equal to 2n, since 2n plus negative 1 plus 1 is 2n plus 0, which is 2n. My next step will be to divide by 2. So I'll get that 0 is less than or equal to n, which we could also write as n is greater than or equal to 0. Because if 0 is less than or equal to n, that means that n is greater than or equal to 0. So n is greater than or equal to 0. I'm going to circle the 0, shade it in, and then I'm also going to shade everything to the right. And let's use a point to double check. Let's plug 1 in for n. Then we'll get that negative 1 is less than or equal to 2 times 1 plus 4 minus 5. That'll give us that negative 1 is less than or equal to 2 plus 4 minus 5. So negative 1 will be less than or equal, 2 plus 4 is 6, 6 minus 5 is 1. Negative 1 is indeed less than or equal to positive 1. So we shaded on the correct side of the 0. In number 4, negative 6 is greater than 5n plus 5 plus 4. I'm going to combine my 5 and 4 on the right-hand side of my inequality. That'll be negative 6 is greater than 5n plus 5 plus 4 is positive 9. Subtracting 9 from both sides, I'll get that negative 6 minus 9 is negative 15, and that's greater than 5n. When I divide by that positive 5, I'll get that negative 3 is greater than n, which we could also write this as n is less than negative 3. I'm going to circle the negative 3. However, I'm not shading it in, since this is not less than or equal to, it is only less than. And I'm going to shade in everything to the left, since n is less than negative 3. In number 5, I have 0 is less than or equal to 2n plus 3n. So I'm going to combine my like terms, which are 2n and 3n. I'll get that 0 is less than or equal to 2n plus 3n, which is 5n. Next, I'll divide both sides by 5 to get that 0 is less than or equal to n, which we can write as n is greater than or equal to 0. Knowing this, I'm going to circle my 0, and I'm going to shade it in since n can be equal to 0. However, n is greater than or equal to 0, so I'm going to shade in everything to the right. In number 6, I'm combining like terms again. I'm going to combine 2p and 4p. 2p minus 4p is going to be a negative 2p, and that is less than or equal to negative 2. My next step, I'm going to divide by negative 2. However, this is very important. Note that when you divide or multiply both sides by a negative, you have to switch the inequality sign. So negative 2p divided by negative 2 is going to be a positive p, and that is now going to be not less than or equal to, but greater than or equal to negative 2 divided by negative 2, which is a positive 1. So p is greater than or equal to positive 1. I'm going to circle 1, shade that in since p can be equal to 1, and I'm going to shade in everything to the right. So just remember that whenever you divide or multiply both sides of an inequality by a negative, you must switch the inequality sign. Meaning if it's less than, it then becomes greater than. If it's less than or equal to, it then becomes greater than or equal to. In number 7, we have 7 is less than negative, or the opposite, of negative k minus 3 plus 2. So essentially when we have the opposite of a polynomial, in this case a binomial, we're distributing that negative, which we can think of as a negative 1. So I'm going to distribute the negative 1 to the negative k and to the 3 with subtraction in between. So I'll have that 7 is less than negative 1 times negative k is a positive k, minus negative 1 times 3, which is negative 3, plus 2. So I'll have 7 is less than k, and when we subtract a negative, it's the same as adding a positive, so plus 3 plus 2. Simplifying, 7 is less than k plus 5, since 3 plus 2 is equal to 5. Then I'll subtract 5 from both sides. This will give me that 2 is less than k, which, if you want the variable on the left-hand side of the inequality, we can write as k is greater than 2. Knowing this, I'm going to circle my 2, not shading it in. However, I'm going to shade everything to the right since k is greater than 2. In number 8, again, I'll start with distribution. I'm going to distribute this 2. However, I'm going to think of it as adding a negative 2. So I'm going to distribute the negative 2 to the n and to the 4 with subtraction in between those two terms. So I'll have 3 plus negative 2 times n is negative 2n minus negative 2 times 4 is a negative 8. However, we know that subtracting a negative is the same as adding a positive, so I'm going to say plus a positive 8 as opposed to subtracting a negative 8. And that is going to be greater than negative 1. My next step, I'm going to combine my 3 and my 8. That will be 11 plus negative 2n is greater than negative 1. Subtract 11 from both sides to get the term with the n by itself. So I'll have negative 2n on my left-hand side of my inequality, and that's going to be greater than negative 1 minus 11, which is negative 12. Dividing both sides by negative 2. Remember, since I'm dividing by a negative, I have to switch that inequality. So that's going to give me that n is less than a positive 6. And it became less than because I divided by a negative, so I switched the inequality from greater than to less than. So n is less than 6. I'm going to circle the 6, not fill it in since n is not less than or equal to it, but only less than, so I'm going to shade everything to the left. And lastly in this video, I'm going to complete number 9. However, before I go over the answer to this, please remember to like this video and subscribe to my channel. All likes and subscriptions are greatly appreciated, and it lets me know that you found this video helpful. Now, in number 9, I'm going to start by distributing the negative 5. And there's subtraction between those two terms. Negative 5 times 1 is negative 5, minus negative 5 times 4a is negative 20a. And that is greater than negative 5. So I'm going to add 5 to both sides, so I get the term with the a all by itself. Negative 5 plus 5 is 0. 0 minus negative 20a is the same as 0 plus a positive 20a. So I'll have positive 20a, and that's going to be greater than negative 5 plus 5, which is 0. Dividing both sides by 20, I'll get that a is greater than 0, since 0 divided by any number is 0. So I'll circle my 0, not shading it in, however, shading everything to the right since a is greater than 0. Also remember, if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comment section below. And in the next video, I'll complete numbers 10 through 15.